What really happened with your host, Mike Rivero. You're listening to the Republic Broadcasting Network, where you'll find out what the Fukushima's going on.
And aloha, America. Welcome to our show today. It is Wednesday, February 28th, 2018, middle of the weekday, hump day, starting that long, slow glide down to Pauhana Friday, and whatever other insanity is going to show up here. It almost daily, it is just getting more insane out there. We have a lot of stuff to talk about today, and our phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. That's 800-313-9443. Mike is in our control room, twiddling the dials, keeping us out of trouble, and ready to answer the phone when you call on in. So we're seeing this ongoing gun debate, and of course the liberal gun grabbers want to stay focused on total confiscation. That's what they want. And they're absolutely appalled at Donald Trump's suggestion that maybe we should arm the teachers. And yesterday, CNN had somebody saying, well, the female teachers can't pack guns. They're wearing dresses and skirts, and it's an absurd thing to say. But apparently, it got even worse because CNN managed to find somebody at Parkland, at the high school, who claimed that armed teachers will shoot students of color at a higher rate. In other words, they're playing the racial injustice card. And they're really grasping at straws. I mean, the premise of this person seems to be that if you arm teachers, they're going to start shooting at people. But in theory, if you're arming the teachers, they're only going to be shooting the people who are shooting in, who so far have tended to be overwhelmingly white. So this was an incredibly dumb and stupid thing to say. And boy, fortunately for the gun grabbers, there actually has been another shooting day in Georgia in a high school, where this teacher, 53-year-old Randall Davidson, initially barricaded himself in an empty classroom, and as students were wondering what was going on, he reportedly fired a single shot out through the glass. And the police showed up, and he's under arrest, and they're out there saying, oh, see, teachers can be just as crazy as everybody else. And just in time to derail Trump's plan to arm teachers. What an amazing coincidence it is. This happens right now when the gun grabbers are trying to shoot down the armed teacher concept. Is an amazing piece of luck on how lucky could they get, really? I want to know what medication this guy was on, this teacher was on. I want to know if he's a liberal Democrat. Now, apparently over in Kentucky, the Pike County teachers, apparently the Kentucky School District, just voted to allow teachers carry concealed guns. Now, I have to be very honest, as a deterrent, it would be far more effective to have them carry in the open, where somebody looking in the classroom sees on the belt. There is a firearm there. Now, over in Israel, which doesn't have school shootings, the teachers are armed with assault weapons. We've all seen the photographs of them. So that would be the solution right there. Now, a lot of people are starting to talk about some of the issues we raised on this show before. Over at Zero Hedge, they're out there saying if police don't have to protect the public, if they're not obligated legally to protect the public, what good are they? Well, they're good for plundering the people with civil forfeiture and traffic tickets and all the rest of it. And every once in a while, you know, they'll find somebody to arrest. But right now, the statistics are that if you decide you need to commit a crime to feed your family, and you go to a neighborhood where you're not known and you hold up a convenience store, the odds are less than 1 in 33 that you'll ever get a phone call from a police officer. That's just how bad it is out there right now. And of course, we have this very bizarre circumstance. We have this American police state. Police have a tendency to shoot first and ask questions later. Many of these police on these prescription antidepressants. In fact, our police don't seem to need much incentive to shoot and kill members of the public. Police have shot and killed Americans of all ages, many of them unarmed, for standing a certain way or moving a certain way or holding something, anything that police could misinterpret to be a gun or igniting some trigger-centric fear in a police officer's mind that has nothing to do with an actual threat to their safety. But when police in Florida had to deal with a 19-year-old embarking on a shooting rampage inside Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School, what did the police do? Well, the sheriffs just hid behind their cars. The sheriff deputies, 4 of them, just hid behind their cars. And even when the regular police showed up to go into the school, they wouldn't participate. I mean, for all 4 of them to behave that way, it's a standout order. I really do. Meanwhile, over in Texas, one of their sheriffs issued a letter to his own deputies clarifying something that probably never should have needed clarification in the first place. Denton County Sheriff Tracy Murphy sent a letter to fellow law enforcement that took an indirect but obvious shot, so to speak, at deputies in Parkland, Florida. And reports have indicated that 4 of Broward County Sheriff Scott Israel's deputies stayed outside, hiding behind their vehicles, while 17 students were being murdered. And Sheriff Murphy's letter made it quite clear, this is not how we act. All commissioned deputies, if you respond to an active shooter, you are expected to take immediate action. We do not stage and wait for SWAT. We do not take cover in a parking lot, and we do not wait for another agency. And this sheriff is absolutely right. That's what we expect of the police and the sheriffs. We're going to do a shout out to our honor affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And take a look down here. Oh, okay, we're doing good. All right. Now, interestingly enough, the Broward state attorneys have opened at least 66 cases of criminal misconduct into the Broward County Sheriff's Office. 66, going back since 2012, drug trafficking, kidnapping, and 40 of the investigations occurred under current Sheriff Scott Israel's watch. And his office is now also under investigation for allegations that his deputies failed to allow the first responders from treating patients at the scene of the school shooting, which probably is why many of them dead. Some of the EMTs are saying some of these kids could have been saved. They bled out while the medical help was kept outside. So what we're seeing right now is a war over this very story. Corporate media is out there pushing as hard as they can. Corporate social media is trying to ban or shut down anybody who's questioning the official story, which only makes it much more obvious something is being hidden. So ultimately, who are you going to believe? You know, these talking heads who have lied to us so many times before about Saddam's nuclear weapons and Assad's sarin gas and torpedoes in the Gulf of Tonkin and Spanish Main in Havana Harbor and on and on. Or you talk to the people who were actually there, such as the teacher who saw the shooter, got shot by him, grazed with a bullet, in full SWAT-style gear, body armor and a rifle she says she did not recognize. Now remember, according to witnesses, supposedly the shooting began less than a minute after the accused shooter, Nicholas Cruz, got out of his Uber car. Now obviously he did not have enough time to put on all that gear, run up 3 flights of stairs, and start opening fire into rooms. It's obvious there was one other shooter there. Nicholas Cruz may just be a patsy. They've just got him so doped up, they've convinced him he really did it. Out in California, good illustration of the liberal political process, apparently some students were participating in this school walkout in response to not having nationwide gun control laws. But after they walked out of the school, they began to throw rocks, damage property. They punched out some of the glass on some of the police cars, and not too surprisingly, they got arrested. So this is the world they're envisioning, a world free from guns where they can throw rocks and damage cars and nobody can hurt them. Now, back in 2015, Steven Seagal, who has since been savaged by the media, I might add, was doing an interview in which he said I hate to say this, a lot of these mass murders and all this funny stuff that's going on, I believe a lot of this is engineered. And I'm certainly in agreement with him about that one. Now, a lot of people are starting to look at the alleged shooter and what was going on. And it turns out that this family that had taken him in following the death of his mother had locked up the guns. They had a gun cabinet. They claimed they didn't realize that Nicholas had a key. But here's the interesting part. The father in this family, James Sneed, is a military intelligence analyst and an Army veteran. Everywhere you turn, there are spooks. There are FBI around David Hogue. And interestingly enough, the description of the rifle by that teacher who saw the shooter in the hallway seems to match the guns being used in these training simulators that David Hogue's father's company manufactures and sells, that train police for terror situations. There are just too many coincidences on this one here. Now, some stores are already yielding to the pressure, and Dick's Sporting Goods has come on out and said that they're no longer going to sell assault-style rifles, also referred to as modern sporting rifles, and they'd already removed them from Sandy Hook, but they're now removing them from all 35 Field and Stream stores. They will not sell firearms to anyone under 21 years of age. They will no longer sell high-capacity magazines. We never have and never will sell bump stocks that allow semi-automatic weapons to fire more liberally. Now, a lot of people are saying, great, this is going to give more business to the mom-and-pop gun stores who will comply with the law, but until the laws are changed, will sell what the people want. And again, it's another case of hypocrisy by the liberals, because the liberals are saying Dick's Sporting Goods has the right to refuse service to whomever they wish, but Christian bakers have no right to refuse service for gay weddings. There's no continuity in their philosophy. It's all knee-jerk reaction to immediate events, and it doesn't make any sense, and it never will. Okay. Now, liberal activists are now targeting advertisers on Infowars.com. I've been through this myself many times, where I'll have advertisers who'll drop supporting whatreallyhappened.com, and they'll be very honest and upright and say, we're getting these threatening phone calls. Threats to us financially, threats to us physically, and we just can't take the chance. And I don't know what's going on with John Stedmiller and the RBN advertisers, but I imagine they're under a tremendous amount of pressure either. Because you see, liberals don't feel they have to play ethically and morally fair. It's win at all costs. Do whatever you need to get your agenda. Stage riots in the cities that voted for Donald Trump, shoot up schools full of children, doesn't really matter as long as the agenda is accomplished. And right now the agenda is to silence us. And they're getting a lot of help from social media, corporate social media rather. YouTube is already banning gun channels, along with those of us who question the official story. But what's really interesting is YouTube refuses to ban this extremist group, this neo-Nazi group chanting "gas the blanks," racial epithet, race war now. That apparently is okay for YouTube. They have no problem with that one at all. So over at 12160, they put together this list of alternative media platforms for 2018. And they're saying, stop feeding the beast. Go someplace else. Let's make Facebook, Twitter, Google, and YouTube obsolete and start flowing to these other platforms. And apparently, as a YouTube alternative, they have BitChute.com, and you can basically click the link on this for alternative media. You can click the link and save the list and start signing up for these platforms. BitChute is a peer-to-peer platform, and they're pledged to respect for people and freedom of expression first. Then there's LiveLeak.com. I'm already on that one. PewTube.com. This is considered the web's most creator-friendly media hosting. It supports not only video, but audio, images, live streaming, and easy monetization, and I just signed up with an account for that earlier today. Vimeo.com, very good reputation for not censoring, and DTube, D.TUBE. Those are alternatives to YouTube. And social media alternatives, we've talked about many of these before. Gab, Minds.com, that's a new one. Voat, and wrongthink.net. And there are even some crowdfunding alternates that people are starting to use. So there's a new world out there, and all these new services are coming on board, and so far they haven't been compromised. And I think it's time that these corporate social media platforms understand they are providing a public forum, and therefore they have to respect our right to freedom of speech. Now, that First Amendment is there to protect the truth, not to protect lies and liars. It's there to protect the truth and those of us who are trying to get the truth out. And I'm glad that these free speech attorneys are suing Twitter. And because we, the American people, need to start punishing those elements of our society that fail to understand the Constitution and the Bill of Rights is the highest law of the land. That Bill of Rights recognizes our pre-existing rights and constrains the government from interfering with them. The Bill of Rights does not grant you any rights. You have. That's what's going on over there. Now, Newsweek continues to be in some serious trouble, along with the investigation into a possible fraud charge. The publisher of Newsweek and the International Business Times apparently has been buying traffic and engaging in advertising fraud. And they were basically buying and manipulating traffic that originates on pirated video streaming sites. The company acknowledges buying the traffic, but they denies that this amounted to ad fraud. Well, if you're buying traffic to artificially inflate your numbers and then you inflate your ad rates, yeah, that's fraud. Those people at Newsweek, they are in serious, serious trouble. They're about to be evicted, and this may well be the fate of all corporate media, because nobody likes a liar, and that's really what it comes on down to. The corporate media stood shoulder to shoulder with the United States government and absolutely assured you Saddam had nuclear weapons and that we had to go to war. They lied to you. That's their job. Their job is to lie you into wars, to help the government propagandize you into doing what the government wants. War in Vietnam, Spanish-American War. All right, let's take a phone call here. Errol in the Netherlands. Aloha. Welcome back to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, hello, Mike Rivero and Claire, but she isn't there.
No, she's not here today.
Okay, is she okay? Is she okay now?
She's slowly but surely getting better. And my biggest task, of course, is to not, keep her from standing up and thinking she can just go back to doing what she was doing before. It's going to take months for this to get better.
Very good, very good. I want to talk to you about DTube, and I want to talk about you about Steemit, because I don't know if you are familiar with cryptocurrencies.
Well, I was starting to learn, but Hawaii just passed a law against having cryptocurrencies here in Hawaii. So I had to shut down my Bitcoin donation thing.
Okay, I will give a very small explanation, and then I will hang up. So it's steemit.com, and steemit.com is connected to DTube.
Okay.
So DTube is it's the alternative from YouTube. Mm-hmm. And the interesting thing about this is when you buy one Steemit, it's about $3.35. So,
okay, Errol, I'm going to have to put you on hold. We got to take a break for commercials. Do not hang up. I'm going to come right back to you right after these words from our sponsors. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And if you would like to help out Republic Broadcasting, and we really need it, we're under attack. All of us in the independent media are under attack for telling the truth in the face of a government that wants you to believe their lies. So the address where you can send a check or money order is Republic Broadcasting Network, 2251 Double Creek Drive, number 302, Round Rock, Texas, 78664. If you want to phone on in and pledge your support, the number is 800-724-2719, extension 03. And it really is a critical time. We wouldn't be asking if we didn't really need it. Okay, getting on back here. Looking at the domestic political corruption here. Tom Fitton was one of the speakers at CPAC, and he's up there saying, I don't want new prosecutors, I want prosecutions. There is more than enough evidence to justify the lawful arrest of Hillary Clinton. Isn't absolutely right. Former FBI Director James Comey went down the laundry list of felony violations of Title 18 committed by Hillary Clinton and then handed her a get-out-of-jail-free card, which is not in his authority to do. And this does not represent an exoneration of Hillary. She did commit those crimes. It's been acknowledged by the former head of the FBI. And yes, a prosecutor could take her to court right now. But it is rather...
Hello?
Hello? Is somebody on the line?
Yeah, Errol.
Oh, Errol. Oh, that's right. You're still here. I'm sorry, my mistake here. You were talking about Steam It.
Yeah, yes. I thought, what happened? But to be very quickly, Steam It is a new platform for the future generations to come, because YouTube has shut itself to both foots. So I'm no financial advisor, but I want to say this to you. When you have a thumbs up, or you have watchers, somebody who watches your videos, or when somebody thumbs up on Steam It, they can purchase Steam. So it is very interesting to see the next generation on the platforms from YouTube, that we will see. If I like your video, I just can say I do like 10 cents, $10 I give to you because I like your video. So if you multiply that by 3,000 or 10,000, you can even do 0.01 cents. So $1 cent you can give someone if he has good information and you have followers. So this is the next generation that is called Steam It. And Steam It is a cryptocurrency. It's an alternative currency. So I will also advise, I know him, I talked to him myself, it's Ryan Dawson.
Yes.
And I will talk to him, I will explain it to him also, because what we see now happening with YouTube is they are censoring everybody, even funny clips. When there is something wrong, and I think also there is an artificial intelligence computer here at work, not people, because there are some funny things happening here. And what I want to say to you is, if you are in cryptocurrencies, if you are in Steam or everything else, it doesn't matter. There are 1,500 or 600 different sorts of cryptocurrencies at the moment, alternate currencies they call it. And Steam It is a platform that gives people that want to give a voice to the internet and the truth movement, or whatever you want to call it, movement. When you like something, you can give them money. So when I do a vote up, I can do like, I give you 1 cent, or I give you 10 cents, or I give you $1. When I vote up, I can type in my account. This is what I give you. So people need to check this out. It's called Steam, S-T-E-E-M. Mm-hmm. And I myself am an investor, not in Steam only, but I see this happening now. So I see in the future that more people, like, say for example, I want to buy $10 of Steam. So I can give 0.01 cent to you because I like what you said. So every cent counts. So this is the future that we are going to now. And YouTube has shot itself in the foot. Not 1 foot, both foods. Two guns at two sides.
Yes,
so
it
that's
has.
what I want to say to you. I'm no financial advisor, but now it's on $3.35 one Steam, and I see it's going up. So I want to say, check out coinmarketcap.com and check it out for yourself. Peace and love, and I talk to you later, Mike. Keep it up the good work.
All right, thanks an awful lot. And again, unfortunately, the state government of Hawaii passed a law banning cryptocurrencies inside the state. So I assume I could own some that were located somewhere else, but not here. All right, we have to take another break for commercials, and we're also trying to deal with some tech issues at the same time. And we'll be back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. We're going to go back to the telephones here to Chris in St. Petersburg. Aloha, Chris. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
First, Mike, what was the social network that you mentioned right after on your listing of minds.com?
I'd have to go back and find that article. So probably it would just be better if you went to the whatreallyhappened.com and found the article about alternative.
All right. Yeah, I was hoping to save a little bit of time here because I've been maintaining a list too, and I'd like to give you some because I'm just so disgusted with Facebook and I don't use Twitter, but there's so many others that we can give our valuable creative efforts to instead of building up popularity, these other silly ones. There's also, and what on this list I'm about to give you, we have maintained, and I'm going to add the one you gave me, wrongthink.net here. That's another new one I heard from you, so thanks for that. But this little list here is at the links page at wearechangetampa.org at the top, near the top, the category social network, social media. Mm-hmm. That's the links page at wearechangetampa.org. There's also ello.co, ELLO.co. It's mainly for people who are creative and artists.
Okay, I found that the page. I've got it up here right now, and the one that came after minds.com is voat.co. And again, this article is still on the main page at whatreallyhappened.com, and I'm starting to put links and icons to these alternative media video outlets in the left margin of my site. So if you have a list, I would appreciate your emailing it to me so I can cut and paste it and add it to the collection.
All right, sure. Could I give it on the air right now?
How many of them have you got?
Oh, just 10.
Okay, go for it.
12,
go for it.
All right. Then there's faceuni.com, F-face, then U, N as in Nancy, I.com, freedomsnetwork.com. You mentioned gab.ai, very popular, informedplanet.org, joindiaspora.com, M as in Mary, EWE.com, not sure how that's pronounced, looks like Mew, MEWE.com, minds.com you mentioned, planet.infowars.com, Seen, SEEN, life, based in Iceland, Steemit, the last caller mentioned, steemit.com, STEEMIT.com, that is, then twister.net.co. And when I go to post a lot of these sites, I get flagged on Facebook. Sure, they get flagged as spam. And increasingly, what's happening to me and others, I'm finding that Facebook is blocking posts regardless of whether they include links, including links to uncontroversial sites. After a post, sometimes Facebook gives the notification, quote, your comment on so-and-so's post was marked as spam. Review the comment, end quote. And in this case, only sometimes are both myself and so-and-so allowed to manually approve the post. We both would need to approve the post to mark it as not spam. And then Facebook says, oh, thank you for the feedback for helping us improve our job, but still the flagging as spam still continues. But sometimes Facebook doesn't even give you that opportunity to flag as not spam and just shadow bans it. So it doesn't appear or it might appear to me, but it doesn't appear to anybody else. And often, like I say, they block posts without any notification at all,
Yes.
requiring such posts to be split into 2 or more parts to find the objectionable part and edit it until it's approved. So in such cases, it makes me think that the person on whose page I posted has deleted the post because they don't like it, when actually it's just Facebook deleting it.
Yes. No, it's
So,
all being handled very underhandedly, because these corporate media outlets know that at some point somebody's going to start talking about a class action lawsuit regarding that First Amendment right to freedom of expression. And in California, there specifically is a law that says when you're running someplace where people get together and communicate, it is legally defined as a public forum and subject to First Amendment rules, or First Amendment rights, rather. And I think we need to really start pushing on this. And we need to basically, we're going to have to go through a shakeout period where we find the best of the replacements for corporate social media, and we all start focusing on them so that they can start becoming strong and draw more viewers and bring in more revenue and start to rival YouTube and Facebook and Google and Twitter. We can't do business with 20 or 30 all at once. None of them will make enough money to be able to stand up to the big corporations. So we're going to have to let some of them fall aside and just go with the ones that really are best.
Right, and they're acting as public comments. They invite you to increase their value by your participation, adding your material. And so it's like, like a radio show that advertises, we take the calls in the order in which they're received. I'm just thinking of a certain local self-described progressive radio station that does this, and then they leave the caller sitting there on the air, on hold to spite them, and they never take their call. Well, the person has invested time to formulate a call and to sometimes call in, and sometimes or oftentimes their call isn't taken. Well, it's the same with these video hosting sites and social networks that are so heavily moderated that you actually improve their value, and then you take the time, you invest your time to do that, and then they don't allow you to express yourself. So on that basis, we can take them down and hopefully not participate. They'll probably legally suffer to such a degree that they'll disappear, and hopefully another 50 million hours per week of Facebook will be reduced. So there's a trend that's encouraging.
Well, there's a trend, and like I said, I'm looking at what's happening to Newsweek. They're not going to be here much longer, and they're under investigation for financial fraud, buying traffic to artificially inflate their numbers. They've been accused of advertising fraud. They're denying that at this point, but dozens of their people have now left. Some of their top people have already been arrested, and corporate media has apparently been pushed into such a corner that they are engaging in this kind of behavior just to survive. And so if we can get other prosecutors in other jurisdictions to start looking at how these corporate media outlets are running their businesses and make sure that they're on the up and up. And I would not be surprised to find that probably a lot of them are engaging in things like clickbotting to get higher numbers and higher ad rates. In fact, we know for a fact they've been doing it. And it should be illegal. It is a form of fraud. Anyway, Peter, thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go. We've got to switch over to Dustin in New Jersey. Aloha, Dustin. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, how you doing, Mike?
Doing okay.
I like Newsweek, Mike. Newsweek makes good liner for my birdcage.
Oh, that joke is so old, especially because Newsweek quit putting out a paper edition about, year and a half, 2 years ago?
Hey, Mike, do people realize, Facebook and them, they're all going to eat each other, all the neoliberals, because because basically, if they don't like what another, liberal says, they're eventually going to, edit them out too, So it's eventually going to burn itself out. Mm-hmm. They'll eat each other. Like Dianne Feinstein is getting pushed to the side, right?
Yeah, that was a bit of a shock. I'm sure it was more so for her than for me.
Hey, Mike, on Arrow from the Netherlands, he's right. I like cryptocurrencies, but I don't like them because, I like to bypass the banks, but I just don't like it because it's digital. You don't hold it. You don't have anything physically on you. That's
yes.
That's the only drawback. except for Venezuela, how they're linking that to their energy, which is a great idea.
Yes.
I mean, Russia's supposed to be doing that too. There was a report a while ago that they were looking into doing that, linking it to energy, which, that's the best thing to do. It's just, but, I mean, Hawaii banned it. It isn't like it's basically, cryptocurrency's kind of like banning bartering, ain't it? Like, is that,
well, I don't know the thinking
illegal?
behind it, and I'm sure there was a lot of lobbying by the banks. If you remember, yesterday we had an article where Bank of America came on out and said that cryptocurrencies are a threat to their business model, and it may just be that some of Hawaii's banks called in some chips for our local politicians, and they basically said it's illegal to have a Bitcoin wallet in Hawaii. And I know a lot of people who are into Bitcoin, and we basically all just shut down, and our Bitcoins are just out there floating in the universe somewhere.
It just don't make sense. How can that be legal for them to do that? You know what I mean? Because it's not affecting Hawaii at all. If somebody wants to, buy something with Bitcoins they have, how is that affecting Hawaii itself? It just affects the banks, like you said.
Yeah, well, that's
what a
it.
Joke.
It's all about protecting the banks. Here in Hawaii, everybody is in debt to the banks, and the banks have got a lot of power.
And then one more thing on cryptocurrencies. There's one more problem with cryptocurrencies. A lot of people some people know, is like the more mining you do, the more electricity it takes, right? Is that how it
Yes.
works? So I know there's a company in Russia working on a circuit board. Like, it does a lot of the mining, I know it takes more of a GPU than a CPU cycle to do the mining.
Yes.
But they're working on a circuit board that relieves a lot of the pressure on a computer. So that could be a big new field too. In the mining of crypto, because cryptos aren't going anywhere. They're here for the long haul, and it's good. But like I said, I just wish there more were linked to something, because one day you can wake up and your wallet will be empty, just like any digital currency. You'd be empty, and you know what? If you have a bar of gold or an ounce of bar or a gram, you still have that physical gram bar of
Yes.
silver or gold to hold. That's the only problem I have with anything digital. People
Yes,
should know
it's
that.
another
if they lose
virtual
their stuff on the
currency,
hard drive.
and it's just as virtual as the Federal Reserve note. And the other problem with it is, again, I keep getting a sense of tulips about it, and I know a lot of people have become very rich with Bitcoins. I know there have been several scandals where people are using malware to turn your computer into their Bitcoin miner, and I think that's definitely a tacky thing to do. Some people have been caught using government-owned supercomputers for Bitcoin mining, including computers that were not supposed to be connected to the internet. So everybody's caught up in this Bitcoin fever and or Bitcoin mania. I think it's Bitcoin mania, and I just don't feel that it's stable. I want a currency that has a commodity base, and you're absolutely right. People are doing so much Bitcoin mining; it's putting a strain on the power infrastructure, along, of course, with all the illegal immigrants and the refugees, and the infrastructure has not been kept up. But that's a lot of electricity that's using. And I remember when Bitcoins first came on out, I was kidding a friend of mine locally that he built this big, huge Bitcoin mining machine. And back then, Bitcoins weren't worth all that much. So I kept kidding him that, it only cost him 20 times what the Bitcoins he'd mined were worth to build the Bitcoin miner. Anyway, listen, Dustin, I'm going to let you go because I made a mistake in our call list, and I need to talk to Peter in Los Angeles. Peter, I apologize for making you wait. What's on your mind?
Well, hi, Mike. This is no need to rush through, but I was just going to echo something that really you've been talking with both Errol and Dustin, and it's that, and the guy before that how capital intensive tyranny has become. Errol mentioned that we all know that they monitor and surveil our phones with catchwords that activate surveillance and so on. And it's the same thing that I'm sure that YouTube and Facebook are doing as well. And when you couple that, and I sent you the scariest video I've seen in a while. I sent you about an hour and a half ago that on drones. This about these new mini drones with artificial intelligence it's frightening as hell, Mike. But the bottom line is, and by the way, they're saying that the attack that we did that killed those 300 Russians in Syria was done with drones. But at any rate, their morale and righteousness has been taken out of war. If war is a continuation of politics by other means, mm-hmm. Then it used to be you needed to get the people behind you and all that kind of thing, but you don't need to do that anymore. They don't need soldiers to fight; they got robots to fight, they got drones to fight. And by the same token, an authoritarian doesn't have to worry about the loyalty of the army firing on its own people. The robots will fire on anybody, and it's tyranny is absolutely capital intensive, and it's getting scarier and scarier. Even your allusion to the people with the bots that they can magnify, guys like Soros, and they can magnify their already inflated importance and so on. It's scary as hell, Mike, to me, anyways.
It is. It's a very, very scary time. Very scary time. Now, what is this? Okay. All right. Well, anything else, Peter?
No, that was it for me, Mike. Thank you. I didn't mean to cut anybody off.
No. We took the calls out of order because, along with taking calls, we were using the text system to deal with some technical issues regarding people not able to hear the show. So Mike and I are busier than two one-armed paper hangers. And Peter, thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go. The phone lines are open again, 800-313-9443. Somebody, a member, just posted an interesting story. Apparently there's been a poll, and the majority of Americans blame government failure and not guns for the school shooting at Parkland. So it would seem that the gun grabbers are not having an easy go of it, which we already knew. Gun sales are through the roof. We got all kinds of gun articles up at the website today, including inexpensive guns you can still acquire, holsters for ladies. Now, getting on back to our domestic politics, Robert Mueller, as we reported yesterday, is now dismissing all charges against former Trump insider Gates. More about this when we come back from these words from our sponsors. And a lot of, let's see, welcome back to our show here. I'm dealing with a lot of this stuff here. Okay. Let me just say, can you email that? Okay. Something news up at the RBN website, and I'm going to promote it, but I need to get it from that machine to this machine. I have a separate machine for Twitch. Got a lot of machines in here. All right, let's get on back here. There's a breaking news story. Apparently, the White House Communications Director, Hope Hicks, has offered her resignation one day after admitting to telling white lies, which I'm not sure. I think that's what's really going on. I smell another big White House shakeup in the offing here. And what communications director or journalist, prostitute, correspondent doesn't lie all the time? That's what they're supposed to do for their living. So there's something else going on here. So they're still trying to push Russia collusion. Mueller has found absolutely nothing, and they're starting to scrape the bottom of the barrel here. So there's this bizarre story, and basically there is supposedly this prostitute who lives in Belarus who's promising to spill the dirt on Donald Trump. She's saying she's the only one who can connect Donald Trump to the Russians. She's got no evidence of it. The problem is she's in prison in Thailand. And so she's saying if the CIA gets her out of the Thai jail, that she'll just spill all the dirt on Donald Trump. Well, obviously, that's a compromised piece of information. But, you know, they're down to using children and young cutie hookers to try and damage Donald Trump. Now, Chavez is out there saying that he doesn't think Jeff Sessions is up to the job and that he should resign. I'm in agreement. We're seeing Sessions start to give lip service to various investigations because of all the criticism he's come under for doing nothing. But I don't think he's going to do anything anyway. He's going to look, and then he's going to do the same thing that James Comey did. Well, we looked, and yeah, there was some questionable behavior, but, you know, nobody meant to do wrong. And they're hard-working people, and they have good intentions, so we're just going to let them go. Now, Grassley and Nunes are pushing for further investigations into Fusion GPS. Apparently, they are not happy with the way things went down over there. And Fusion GPS has now been revealed, exposed, not as an opposition research company, but as a fabricator of smear jobs. They're propaganda laundry. They basically take this information and say, this is opposition research. We guarantee it's all true. And so that needs to be looked into a little bit more intently. Now, apparently, the House Intelligence Committee is a little bit upset with Steve Bannon. And we'll have more about this after station identification. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show, hour number 2. And we're talking about this situation with Hope Hicks and Steve Bannon. And Hope Hicks' resignation today apparently tracks back to her testimony behind closed doors with the House Intelligence Committee. And during that time, she basically joined Steve Bannon in claiming that those communications are privileged. And it's not exactly clear where the white lies may have occurred, but she did acknowledge she's occasionally told fibs on behalf of her boss, but nothing substantive. Well, that's obviously been seized on, saying intentional misleading, and lying is wrong, but we all understand the concept of a white lie. Like, no, those slacks don't make you look fat, darling. See what I mean? So they're kicking up a huge fuss about that. Let's talk about the war zones. There is so much going on over there. The U.S. has reportedly struck Syrian government forces, and apparently this was airstrikes, and apparently the Syrian Arab Army responded by launching anti-aircraft missiles at the aircraft, attacking their positions. Now, doesn't look like they got any American planes, but it's only a matter of time. This thing is spinning wildly out of control. Now, the United Nations is talking about as yet unreleased report, and it's being fed to the newspapers by an anonymous Security Council diplomat, meaning probably Nikki Haley, trying to claim that Syria gets some of the components for their chemical weapons factories from North Korea. And a lot of people are very skeptical of this. Just because something comes from the United Nations doesn't mean it's objective or neutral or accurate. Remember the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change? That was a UN body, and they were right there on that human-caused global warming nonsense. This is just trying to gin up a case for escalating in Syria that the American people will sit still for, and you shouldn't. Now, Ben Swann has got his reality check franchise back, and he did one today, basically saying there is no sarin gas being used by Assad in Syria. Even SecDef Mattis is saying there is absolutely no evidence. We're pretty sure it's happening, but there is no evidence of it. Well, if there's no evidence, then it didn't happen, especially with all the lies we've been told about Saddam's nuclear weapons and so forth and so on. It's just more war propaganda. And they're trying to drag everybody in. Oh, Iran's to blame for this, and Russia's to blame for that, and China's to blame for this, and North Korea's to blame for that. Now, apparently, there was a U.S.-based activist who was posting on Twitter trying to raise awareness about the Syrian civilians being harmed by that evil Bashar al-Assad. And he got outed because the photos that he was using are from Gaza and Mosul. not Syria. Huge amounts of propaganda. Now, this is a very scary story. And this will tell you a big part of why there's all this stink face towards Russia. General Joseph Votel, he's head of the U.S. Central Command, and he briefed the House Armed Services Committee on Tuesday on the efforts against Islamic State and the wars in Syria, all of which fall under the purview of CENTCOM. He made an interesting and alarming comment to the House Armed Services Committee saying Russia threatens our ability to dominate. Russia threatens our ability to dominate. So here you have head of CENTCOM is out there saying the U.S. goal is to dominate the world, and those gosh darn Russians, they're just not going along with the program. That is very scary. Now, Iran has sharply criticized the United States, Britain, and France for the massacre of innocent Yemeni women and children. It is a horrid, horrid humanitarian disaster over there. And yes, the guilt is shared. Saudi Arabia is acting as a proxy for the United States, trying to reassert puppet rule. But it may be that some people in this country are saying this has gone on too long and we have other things we need to do, and our military is spread way, way too thin. So there are 4 senators, Senators Bernie Sanders, Rand Paul, Mike Lee, and Chris Murphy, and they have put forward a bill that basically challenges President Trump's war powers and basically says there is no congressional authorization for the use of force in Yemen or supporting of same. And they're going to try and get this through the Congress to basically restore the power to declare war back to the Congress where the Constitution says it has to be. We're going to do a shout out now to our on-air affiliates who are just now rejoining our network. And let's do a little of that here as well. Okay. All right. Now, remember what I said before. Everybody's trying to blame blame Russia for everything. And so now, according to this article in Al-Bawaba, Trump is accusing Russia of undermining the U.S. sanctions on North Korea. Saying it's all Russia's fault. And of course, this latest round of sanctions is not approved by the UN Security Council. It's unilateral on the part of the United States. China has come out against them, saying they're not helpful. Even Japan is hemming and hawing and saying, we don't think this is going to help. This is just pushing harder on North Korea, which is exactly what the United States wants to do. They want a war with North Korea, but they're trying to make it look like North Korea's fault by goading them into doing something first. And again, blame Russia, blame Russia, blame Russia. Russia's the reason the United States can't dominate the world anymore. Well, the reason the United States can't dominate the world anymore is our weapons are overpriced junk. Our young people are, 3/4 of our young people can't do military service. They're just physically not there. They can't throw the hand grenades. There's a certain amount of physical labor that's involved with setting up camps and bases all over the world. And these 3/4 of the kids can't make the standards. And they've already lowered the standards once. This is a very stupid idea for a war. This country, the United States of America, is going to lose this next world war. But the banks don't care. They make money off of both sides. And apparently our politicians don't care because they'll just set up shop someplace else after it's all over. Now, interestingly enough, Canada has sent a submarine to assist in surveillance on North Korea. And it's a very courageous thing to do. Canada is not known for sending their submarines to other sides of the ocean. And the last time Her Majesty's Canadian submarine Chicoutimi crossed an ocean, the boat flooded, caught fire, and a sailor died. Now, that was 15 years ago. And now this diesel-electric submarine has deployed to Asia, farther from home than any Canadian submarine in 5 decades. on a mission that the Canadian military hopes will erase doubts about the vessel's effectiveness. So I guess even in Canada, they have a problem with, are these weapons really credible? Are they really usable? They cost so very much. Anyway. Getting on back to Pakistan, as you know, the U.S. has ignited some tensions over there, declaring that Pakistan is not really serious about dealing with terrorists. China, on the other hand, says they're doing a great job. Now, here's where it gets interesting. Do you remember a while back, the United States signed this deal for military aid to Israel? $38 billion with a B dollars. That's an all-time record, the largest aid package in U.S. military history. And it only took a year and a half for Senate hawks like Lindsey Graham and Chris Coons to say it's nowhere near enough. It's short-sighted. We have to give them more. So what if the U.S. government lost $2 trillion? We've got to give more over there. Okay. All right. Looking at it, I have so many things coming in. The smartphone terminal thing. Okay, there we are. So, yeah, homelessness in the streets of America, infrastructure is crumbling, and still the lawmakers want to shovel more of your tax money to Israel. Now you know why these other countries are so upset about foreign puppet rule. It's not for their benefit here. Now, Amnesty International has come out with their annual report saying that Israel is carrying out extrajudicial executions and they have been torturing children. No surprise, we've been reporting on it ourselves all this year. Brutal, brutal times. Now, another scary story. Apparently, Donald Trump is asking his admirals if it's possible to arm the U.S. Navy's warships with nuclear weapons. And of course, yes, it is. They've always been designed that way. It's just they don't carry them because they don't expect to use them and they don't want somebody hijacking the ship and using them against us. Apparently, they're already in the works for a nuclear-tipped cruise missile to go with the stealth destroyer Zumwalt. And it's got quite a long range, apparently under the assumption that the Zumwalt may not be able to leave the dock because of engine problems, drivetrain problems. What's really alarming about this nuclear posture review they've just come out with is it's basically saying this is about Russia and China. And Trump is saying that putting these nuclear weapons on ships would prevent China from mistakenly concluding that it could gain advantage by using its nuclear weapons in Asia, or that any use of nuclear weapons, however limited, is acceptable. Of course, obviously, except for our nuclear weapons, because our nuclear weapons are good, and the other people's nuclear weapons are bad. Our nuclear weapons are sweetness and light. Those other nuclear weapons, they're terrible. Now, let's talk about the economy just a little bit. As you know, the U.S. sanctions mania has hit Russia several times with sanctions in order to harm their economy. It turns out it has had the opposite effect. Russia has started becoming more internally self-reliant. They're not trading across the borders. What they need, they make domestically. They grow GMO-free food. They're reviving their manufacturing, and as a result, Russia's investment rating has just been upgraded. Russia is now seen as becoming a better investment prospect. Now, the European Union and China are considering economic retaliation against popular American companies in response to Donald Trump's call for steel and aluminum tariffs. And again, this idea of protectionism, it's not a good way to go. If you want to be selling your product to the rest of the world, you make products they want to buy. Higher quality, yes, you can charge a higher price. When you make shoddy merchandise and then try and arm twist the rest of the world into buying your product, that doesn't work out very well, like the U.S. is now doing to Iraq over the S-400. Now, earlier this month, the United States government released its annual financial report for the year 2017. They lost $1.2 trillion. So much for all the claims that the economy is doing very, very well. That basically came out to $2.2 million for every single minute of the entire year. In fact, the U.S. government lost more money last year than the entire Australian economy produced. And the debt is still spinning out of control. Everyone talks about this $23 trillion debt. It's a lot more than that. When you add in the unfunded liabilities, it's over $100 trillion. They don't have that much money. That's why this is all going to collapse. For those of you still on Obamacare, your premiums will rise an average of 18% next year. I think if my math is correct, that means that your premiums for those Obamacare-compliant insurance policies have doubled since they were shoved down your throat. Now, here's an interesting statistic. Apparently, 54% of millennials want universal basic income. They want free money. Of course, money is never free. It's loaned into circulation at interest by the Federal Reserve, and the Federal Reserve expects to be paid back. So where's that money going to come from? Where's the interest going to come from? But those liberal snowflakes, they just like the idea of free money. Over in Great Britain, more trouble for more retail outlets. One of the Britain's biggest electronics retailers, Maplin, has collapsed into receivership after talks with buyers failed to secure a sale. They have more than 200 stores and 2,300 staff, and basically they're in trouble. Same thing with the British division of Toys R Us. They have gone into receivership. 3,000 jobs lost there. This is going to be a bad year between the war and the crashing economy. Now, interestingly enough, a U.S. judge on Tuesday sided with President Trump's administration and rejected an attempt by the state of California and environmental groups to stop the government from building a wall on the U.S. border with Mexico. Now, the lawsuit was filed in San Diego federal court, alleging that the proposed wall violates federal environmental standards as well as constitutional provisions regarding the separation of powers and states' rights. Now, the plaintiffs asked U.S. District Judge Gonzalo Curiel to stop the administration from pursuing the barrier until it demonstrates compliance with environmental laws. Okay, a couple of problems wrong with this. Donald Trump is not building the wall across California's border. He's building it across the border of the United States of America. Second of all, has anybody gone down from the EPA and basically told all those illegal immigrants crossing across the border, leaving their trash and feces and urine behind, what a terrible damage they are doing to the environment and that they should cut it out? Anybody ever did that? There's a double standard here. Those illegal immigrants are bad for the environment. Probably more so, more toxic certainly than the wall's going to be. Now, Nancy Pelosi says we don't need a wall. All we have to do is mow the grass so that people can be seen if they're trying to be smuggled through the grass. And she thinks that's a better border solution than the wall. No, because somebody has to be there watching to see the illegals come through the mowed grass. Somebody has to be mowing the grass. But again, Pelosi is still out there. The Democrats are desperate to load up this nation with illegal immigrant voters. We're being invaded, people. We're being clandestinely taken over by foreign population who is now being given access to our elections because the Democrats have openly admitted they rely on the illegal immigrants to put them over the top. Now, apparently, more than 850 illegal immigrants managed to elude deportation officers conducting operations in Northern California this week. And apparently, the head of the deportation force blamed Oakland Mayor Libby Schaaf for helping them to escape. And Oakland gets something like $27 million in federal funding every year. I think Trump ought to cut that out, along with some Title VIII arrests for the mayor. And the problem is only going to get worse. Article out of pjmedia.com. According to the Office of the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, 68 million people around the world are or are at risk of becoming refugees. The migration of a few million people has already turned the European Union inside out and motivated the election of an America First presidency. What we have seen so far, though, is nothing compared to what is to come. And here's where it gets really kind of serious. Fertility is declining in almost all of the educated and prosperous parts of the world, notably including East Asia, but remains extremely high in the least educated parts of the world with the worst governance and the poorest growth prospects. In other words, civilization is going backwards. We'll be back after these few words. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And I've just been informed about an event, a web event, I guess is what you would call it, here at RBN, both tonight and tomorrow night. And the article is titled, Want to Find Out How to Support RBN and Reduce Your Electric Bill? Click here. And of course, I have just posted this to the main page of whatreallyhappened.com, so you can look for that a little bit later. And I'll give you another reminder toward the end of the program as well. Getting on back to immigration and Europe and how bad things really are, Paul Joseph Watson is out there saying that there's a new study showing that 96% of rapes are being committed by men of foreign descent up there in Sweden. Rape has, Sweden's the rape capital of the world. Remember that story we did about Sadiq Khan in London? The police don't understand why rape is up 20%. Couldn't possibly be all these refugees and immigrants coming on here without any controls. 96% of rapes. It's a clash of cultures, a clash of civilizations. And generally when you have a clash of civilizations, the more savage civilization tends to win. Article out of Sputnik News here. U.S. companies capitalized off Puerto Rico without restoring power. And basically, this is a replay of what was going on down in Haiti. Power companies contracted by the U.S. government to restore power to the island of Puerto Rico are already pulling their workers off the island, even though roughly 300,000 Puerto Rican customers are still without electricity as a result of Hurricane Maria. Because governing is choosing, and governing is prioritizing, and we could give electricity back online for all these Puerto Ricans, but we've got a war to pay for. Apparently out in Las Vegas, there is a group of survivors of the October 1st shooting that now basically meet on a weekly basis at a local hangout called In Cahoots. And the survivors all seem to have questions about what happened that night, knowing that authorities have failed to be forthright about what happened. And they're certainly right to do that. They're certainly right to question. We have a right to question when the story doesn't make any sense, whether it's in Las Vegas or Parkland or Sandy Hook. Now, the U.S. government seems to be taking the attitude of what we say is the truth, and you will believe it. And any other points of view, that's Russian propaganda. Now, Antifa is openly recruiting and inciting the mentally ill to commit violence. Now, this is a group backed by George Soros, and for the past 2 years, they've been violently protesting candidate and then President Donald Trump. They have committed felony assault against Trump supporters and destroyed public and private property worth millions of dollars. Antifa has now found a new recruiting angle. Apparently, regular college kids aren't violent enough, after all. They tend to be snowflakes. So they're recruiting and training the mentally ill in Texas to commit violent acts against conservative. Now, that's conspiracy to commit assault. This is not peaceful protesting. This is war. And remember what I said about the other day, where covert agencies, not just Antifa, but CIA, FBI, will be looking for people with mental problems, people who are on these prescription antidepressants, knowing they can be talked into doing virtually anything, and they're cultivated, they're groomed over months, maybe years, to turn them into something that can be put into play, just another asset. Send the asset on out to Parkland, we're going to frame him for the shooting there. Okay, now, there's a new ransomware out there called GandCrab, and apparently it showed up in January, and it is very aggressive, in part because the original authors of this ransomware have issued a toolkit to their fellow hackers to deploy GandCrab in their part of the world and pay back a piece of the action to the original authors. And so it's really out there. However, there's an article that you need to look at. Hit by ransomware, this new free decryption tool for GandCrab might help. And in there are a couple of links of websites where people are starting to put together collections of these decryptors for ransomware. And obviously this is a resource that you should have available and on a second machine or your smartphone or your tablet in the event you get infected with malware. Because now you don't have to make the payment. And apparently this GandCrab charges as much as $1,000 to unlock your data. And of course, our government is doing absolutely nothing about it. It's hugely expensive. And I have to wonder, is all this ransomware the work of the NSA? Is it the cyber version of civil forfeiture, police civil forfeiture? It's a government looting its own people. Now, apparently the U.S. government has found a contractor called Celebrite, and Celebrite claims they can break the encryption on all models of the iPhone and all versions of iOS. And it is likely that Celebrite is using unknown zero-day exploits. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to the show. I'm going to step on back to politics here because this article just now came on in. Apparently, the 2016 presidential campaign of U.S. Senator Bernie Sanders has agreed to pay a $14,500 civil penalty to the Federal Elections Commission for foreign government election meddling, quote, without admitting liability, end quote. No, it wasn't Russia. It was Australia. The whole thing was caught on hidden camera by a Project Veritas reporter. So, again, everybody wants to buy influence, especially for a government where it's there for sale. Neon sign over the Capitol building, buy your influence here. Don't forget happy hour. So we're talking about this U.S. government contractor, Celebrite, which can break into any iPhone or iOS, and the concern is they must be using unknown zero-day exploits to gain access to the phones, which puts us in the same dangerous position that we were in with the NSA and CIA tools. We have a single company is hoarding exploits. And if that single company gets hacked and those exploits get out, then the cyber criminals have another round of incredibly powerful tools. Now, here's an interesting article, and I did read the article all the way through, and I saw the demo video. Basically, everybody's misusing artificial intelligence. Anything that's new and hot, oh, it's AI. AI is something very specific and narrow. But anyway, over at Google, neuroscientists at Canada's University of Toronto, Scarborough, are using very powerful computers to literally read minds. And what they're doing is they're reconstructing images of what people are seeing gathered by electroencephalography. And basically, in a test, the subjects were hooked up to these little helmets with all the little wires going in there, brainwave reading equipment, and they were shown images of faces, and the computer, just reading the brain, was able to recreate the image of the face. Now, this obviously would have a good application in creating eyewitness reports Instead of having to use a police sketch artist or some of these other little kits, you just basically put this hat on the crime victim. They remember the face of the person who attacked him, and you've got an excellent likeness. And could also be used to allow direct printing or 3D printing of something that is only being imagined in the head. That'll be very exciting if they get that to work. Of course, there's always a downside. Could be used for bad things here. You remember the movie Minority Report? It is unfortunately, sadly, starting to come to pass here. And 7 months ago, a senior Chinese official promised that computers would one day help authorities spot crime before it happens. And now in the western Xinjiang region, it's already happening with the establishment of a system that critics are calling Orwellian in scope and ambition. But it's being used to place people in political re-education. Nobody's getting killed, nobody's getting put in jail, but they're being put in this education. And it's called the Integrated Joint Operations Platform, or IJOP, and it assembles and parses data from facial recognition cameras, Wi-Fi, internet sniffers, license plate cameras, police checkpoints, banking records, and police reports made on mobile apps from home visits. And the problem I have with all of this is this attempt to predict human behavior with a computer is assuming a one-size-fits-all, that all of our brains are operating the same way, that all of our facial reactions to trauma and concern are the same way, and therefore we can be just sort of dumped into these categories. It doesn't really work that way. I can tell you already, somebody with a liberal slant of mind has come up with this computer system because they're absolutely convinced that everything that's in our head comes from the environment and we're all the same inside. People react to things different way, and that reaction can be misread. And I know this because when I was just starting into college, before the magic took off, I worked one semester at a 7-Eleven store. And during the time at the 7-Eleven store, money kept disappearing from the register. And so finally, the owner of the store asked us all to take polygraph tests. And when I was asked if I'd been stealing from the store, the shock of even being thought of as being that kind of person produced a reaction, and the polygraphist admitted he didn't know what it meant. He didn't know that it said I was guilty, but I lost my job anyway. So, anyway. We were talking about this yesterday, this bill called FOSTA, Fight Online Sex Trafficking Act, and it allows for private lawsuits and criminal prosecutions against internet platforms and websites based on the actions of their users. Now, this is the same thinking behind the gun grabbers. Yes, it may be people committing the crimes, but let's go after the guns. Yes, it may be pedophiles who are posting these things on the website, but let's go after the webmasters. And the internet, as we know today, exists only because of Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act, which prevents online platforms from being held liable for their users' speech except in certain circumstances. Now, FOSTA punches a major hole in Section 230, enabling lawsuits and prosecutions against online platforms, including ones that might not even be aware that sex trafficking is taking place because of coded messages and back-channel discussions. And they will expand it. The war is on between corporate media and independent media. This will be expanded. Oh, we can sue webmasters for fake news that are on their website. Oh, really? Who gets to decide it's fake news? Well, we in the government, of course, obviously. Very dark times. Very, very dark times. Now, there's an article here about how poultry farming in India is contributing to the global superbug problem. Now, if you don't know what I mean, a superbug is a virus or bacteria which has been exposed to just enough antibiotics that they no longer respond. They develop an immunity. That's what a superbug is. And in India, poultry farming is very much a factory operation. The chickens are just crammed in together in these giant hot rooms. And in order to prevent infections, they're just filled with antibiotics and other chemicals to make the chicks grow bigger and faster for more and quicker profit. But along the process, the infectious agents that are exposed to these chicks, they're picking up these trace amounts of antibiotics, and they're developing an immunity, and that is a big problem. Now, yesterday, 3M settled a suit filed by the state of Minnesota for $850 million, averting a much-awaited trial over the company's responsibility for massive amounts of waste-containing perfluorinated chemicals, which is dumped in the state for over 40 years. And the suit charged the Minnesota-based company, which made the perfluorinated chemicals for use in Scotchgard, firefighting foam, and other products, acted with a deliberate disregard for the high risk of injury to the citizens and wildlife of Minnesota. And they're paying the fine, but they're avoiding the trial. And I think the victims of these chemicals would probably have it the other way. And again, a reminder, if you have not seen it, it's still on HBO, Atomic Homefront. Very well-made documentary. So let's get into human-caused global warming. 40 years ago, scientists blamed the polar vortex, loops in the jet stream, cold and extreme weather on global cooling. Now they're blaming the exact same things on global warming. And the reality is we are cooling. We've entered a cooling phase with the sun. But the people who are still pushing this global warming, whether it's a desire to impose a carbon tax on you or just a desire to keep their reputations intact and not be made to look like fools and utter fools and goofballs, we don't know, but they're still pushing it. And it is a fraud. It's bad science. It's absolutely bad science. And we're getting all these reports, apparently. Major winter storm in the Pacific Northwest, down across the lower Great Plains. And we're still a little ways away from winter being over. Absolutely. Now, up in Norway, there is a facility that a lot of people concerned with GMO know about and are concerned about. It's called the Doomsday Seed Vault. And basically, it is a project that Norway put together to save samples of untainted seeds ahead of the launch of GMO technology, or in the event of some disaster, if we do go to nuclear war, or global cooling kills certain crops, governments will be able to request seeds from the vault to restart their agricultural industry, and Norway is about to spend $13 million to upgrade its Doomsday Seed Vault. There's only one problem with using these Doomsday seeds to reseed after a GMO disaster. The pollen lasts for 3 years. How do you protect these new pristine seeds from the GMO crops? There was a project to try and find some pure maize, the original version of corn, in the mountains of central Mexico. And they went up there, hiked way into the jungle, and found some samples and brought them back and discovered they had already been contaminated with GMO genes for corn. It spreads everywhere, on the wind, on the water, on animals. See, let's get some phone calls coming on in here. 800-313-9443. Very ugly story over in the Daily Mail. Apparently, the Catholic Church, officials in the Catholic Church, helped one of their priests avoid murder charges for 6 decades after he raped and strangled a teacher and dumped her body in a canal. Now, this former priest, he's 85 years old, was finally convicted of murdering 25-year-old Irina Garza in a South Texas court on December 7th, 2017, was sentenced to life in prison the next day, more than 57 years after her body was found. Now, he's an old guy. He's not going to last much longer. He basically got away with it. For 57 years, he got away with it. And apparently, the 48 Hours investigation broadcast on CBS in the episode titled Sins of the Father revealed the numerous ways the Catholic Church protected this guy from justice in the intervening years. So, here's a little bit of a scary story. Over in the Canary Islands, The island of La Palma has been rocked by over 70 earthquakes, and people are very, very nervous there, understandably. 4 months ago, they had a swarm of 200 earthquakes that was rocking the island, and people are very concerned because it is a volcanic island, and it's dormant. It's not extinct. It is dormant. And most importantly, the volcano that most people are concerned about is Cumbre Vieja. Now, Cumbre Vieja is a very large volcano. It's basically at the northern end of the island. Its west flank goes right down to the ocean. And a large portion of it has actually cracked away from the main cone and slipped down several feet. It's geologically very weak. Now, this raises a real possibility that were Cumbre Vieja to erupt, that it could blow off sideways the way Mount St. Helens did. And all that debris would crash into the ocean, creating a major tsunami heading west across the Atlantic. So we need to keep our eye on that one. My perception has been we seem to be in a period of increasing geological seismic volcanic activity. Have to be very careful about that. Now then, article coming out of Zero Hedge, millennials will be the fattest generation on record. And the article goes, this generation is apparently the smartest generation to ever roam planet Earth. However, they can hardly manage their health. Something is amiss here. It turns out millennials are set to become the fattest generation on record, with 3/4 projected to be obese by the time they reach 40. Now, yes, they have a very sedentary lifestyle with their little electronic devices and everything, but that's not the only thing that's gone wrong. A major part of America's obesity problem, and it affects all age groups, are the chemicals added to processed food that make us want to eat more. Monosodium glutamate, or MSG, is promoted as a flavor enhancer, but what it actually does is interfere with the signal from the stomach to the brain that says, I'm full. When scientists want to do obesity studies using rats, they have to dose their food with tons of MSG, because otherwise rats left to themselves stop eating when they've had enough. You never see a fat rat in nature. They have to be artificially created with MSG. But food manufacturers love MSG because people eat more, they go back to the store to buy more, profits are up, and who cares if the customer is getting sick? And because so many people are trying to avoid monosodium glutamate, food packagers are allowed to use any one of some 30 euphemistic names for it, like hydrolyzed soy protein, so that people who are not memorizing that entire list may buy these products with MSG. Now, aspartame is another one. It's supposedly a sugar substitute. At one time, it was actually declared a biological weapon, an excitotoxin. It excites your brain cells to a dangerous level. But what it actually does in the current food dosage, it makes your body to crave real carbohydrates, which is why you see those bundled deals at the supermarket, where you buy a 2-liter bottle of diet soda and it's accompanied by a big bag of chips. And like monosodium glutamate, aspartame also confuses up the I'm full brain signal. Then there are all those hormones injected into poultry and cattle to make them grow bigger and faster. We were just talking about those with the article about India. And people eating the products from those animals are exposed to trace amounts of unmetabolized hormones. And it may just be a tiny amount at one meal, but over years of low-level exposure, it adds up. And people will respond to these hormones the same way the poultry and the cattle did. They will grow. They will put on weight. Now, when I started my weight loss program, when I started my weight loss program, I was just shy of 300 pounds. And now I'm down to 170. And the first thing I did, practically the only thing I did, was scrub all these chemicals out of my diet. And I just started losing weight like crazy. All right, we got to take a break for commercials. Join us on the air, 800-313-9443. We'll be right back. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And, well, let's go ahead and take a phone call. Dan in British Columbia, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yeah, aloha, Mike. Just again with the Florida shooting, there's just so many questions. I just don't want it to get like, the thing in Vegas, we've almost all forgotten about that one already after all these months. And this one, I mean, there's so many so many holes in it.
Yes.
So pardon the pun. This Cruz guy, this Nicholas Cruz, it's almost like he was set up as a patsy.
Yes.
And it reminds me of reminds me of how they set up Oswald in a lot of ways. I mean, this Cruz guy, you know, he's allegedly punching walls, telling people he's planning to shoot at the school. I'm going to be a professional school shooter, he says, on a YouTube comment, allegedly. Someone called the sheriff's office, said he could be a school shooter in the making, allegedly. Seen with guns and knives in an Instagram post. And then this Alexa Meadnick girl talking to Cruz while she's walking down the stairs, and there's shots fired on the floor above. And, you know, the guy's not out of breath. He's not sweating.
He's not wearing SWAT
you
gear.
Look back at, yeah, he's not wearing full metal garb. So Oswald, you know, apparently he shot at an Army General, Edwin Walker. He bought a Mannlicher Carcano on a mail order when he could have just walked into any Texas gun shop without ID.
Yes.
And bought any rifle. He was sent to Russia.
That was the world's worst shoulder weapon. In fact, the scope on the Oswald rifle was defective, but they wanted to plant a Mannlicher Carcano on him because the original plan was to say that Oswald assassinated Kennedy on behalf of Castro and whip up support for a new Cuban invasion. And following the Bay of Pigs, the government of Cuba had imported shiploads and shiploads of the Mannlicher Carcano to hand out to their citizens.
Yeah, unbelievable. And then they sent him to Russia. There's Oswald lookalikes at Cuban embassies, the Mexican consulate, the Russian consulate in Mexico City. He was with the Fair Play for Cuba committee.
Yeah, but that was being run by that FBI guy, Guy Bannister.
Guy Bannister. He was seen at a gun range shooting at another member's target, saying, "Oh, I'm sorry, I thought I was shooting at JFK."
Well, that was a double because the real Oswald wasn't in town at that time. Yeah, they were sending up people to pretend to be Oswald, just like we have all these social media posts and all the rest of it. At this point, I seriously doubt that Nicholas Cruz actually pulled a trigger that day, but they've got him so juiced up on medications. You know, certainly the people he's living with don't want him to come back home. He was the patsy. He was set up as a patsy.
And just like Oswald, Oswald was seen having a Coke on the first floor, not out of breath. And the cops knew miraculously how to find Oswald. They knew how to find this Cruz guy with no problem. Anyways, I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
All right, we're going to do a station identification. We have another caller waiting on the line when we come back from these few words. Aloha, America. Welcome back to our show. Hour number 3. The phone lines are open, 800-313-9443. And we're going to take a couple of phone calls here before we get back to the news. James in Ohio. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi. You were talking about aspartame, and I wanted to reference an article called Neutra Fear and Loathing in Augusta, Georgia. It's in a book called You Are Being Lied To, edited by Russ Kick of disinfo.com. And it describes the plant where aspartame is made, NutraSweet. And apparently you're supposed to wear one of those spacesuit type outfits with a respirator like they wear when they spray glyphosate.
Yes.
And occasionally a businessman will walk in just in a suit, and within a second or two they'll drop over dead. And that happened like half a dozen times, I guess, before they put safeguards in place to ensure that it didn't happen. Also, the aspartame excites the glutamate receptor, and the most advanced set of glutamate receptors are in the amygdala. You have one on either side of your brain. It's named after the Greek word for almond, which they resemble. They are your centers of fear and aggression, and they are also kind of glued to the hippocampus where you have long-term memory storage. So not only is it a bad deal, but emotionally and memory-wise, but if you're on, say, SSRIs and you're drinking diet sodas, it's like a double whammy. Also, FD&C food colors, they're what I facetiously referred to as alien technology because the molecules don't resemble anything that exists in nature. And it was discovered that children become extremely agitated. I remember this myself, eating brightly colored cereals or chewing brightly colored gum, and they found that when they removed FD&C food colors from their diet, they settled right down.
Yes.
So, but
I remember the big stink over red dye number 2.
Yeah. That's about all I have for you.
The central government is supposed to be checking this stuff out before it's allowed on the market. But the new models, just like with computer software, let's put it on out there, and if enough people die, then we'll do something about the problem. Anyway, Thank you for the phone call. We're going to switch over to Francis in North Carolina. Aloha, Francis. Welcome back to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha to you.
Aloha snack bar.
The snack bar and everything, let me tell you. You mentioned earlier in the show about that Nancy Pelosi was having a canary about, well, the only thing we'd have to do is mow the grass or whatever have you.
Yes.
Well, that's fine. Then go ahead. Let her move her residence down there. Have her lawn service mow the yard. And then the immigrants that are illegally coming in can come to her home, sleep on the floor or whatever the case might be, and she can have her maid service serve them food or whatever, which happens to be done by someone who is illegally there, immigrating, that is, and so forth, and then see how she likes it.
Well, again, the Democrats have actually openly admitted it. They are desperate for illegal immigrants to come on in and vote. Apparently, Rahm Emanuel up in Chicago is looking at the illegal immigrant vote to keep his job because the rest of Chicago is very unhappy with him. But again, these people are not supposed to be able to vote. Only legal citizens or those with permission to be here are allowed to vote in our elections. And we've got, 15, 16, 20, maybe 25 million illegal immigrants placed in the right locations. That can completely reverse an election. We don't really know how many illegal immigrants voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016 because records weren't kept and IDs were not required. And that's weird. That's the only place in our society where having to show an ID is declared racist and illegal. You have to show an ID to drive a car. You have to show an ID to buy tobacco or alcohol. You have to show an ID for all kinds of things. Nobody ever says you're being racist. I mean, this is a joke.
If anything, it would be pertinent for them to show that they are a U.S. citizen as far as ID goes. I can appreciate. I had one relative or non-blood-related relative made a comment that, yes, they're an American, and I thought, how do you get that? So they're the North American continent. I thought, okay, that's different. That does not necessarily mean that they are a U.S. citizen unless they actually put in for that. But aside from that, on a side issue, as it were, as far as the political scene goes and the election and this country, that country, or whatever, interfering and so forth, I have an odd question for you. Outside of Bill Gates with Microsoft, there is what other internet services besides him, or is he predominating the whole scene?
Well, Bill Gates is retired from Microsoft, and now he just runs the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, traveling around the world, doing vaccines and other stick-your-nose-in-it kind of things.
Well, yeah. But besides that, what other ones are there?
There are three major platforms out there. There's Microsoft Windows, there is Apple's iOS, and then there's Linux. And Apple wisely made the decision some years ago to abandon their custom platform, and the iOS of today is a variant on Linux. And that's actually kind of fun for the hardware hackers like me.
I can imagine. Well, the reason why I pose that question is this. Recently, there was a discourse or displeasure being issued that Microsoft has a info cloud over in Europe, I guess around Ireland or whatever the case might be, which is posing a real issue or problem in some way, shape, or form. I didn't get all the real details of it. And that's when it hit me. With what is going on with this political party, that political party saying, well, Russia invaded this, Russia invaded that, or whatever the case was. Well, then, if there is such an issue, then why is that in place for that to occur? Which would basically make Microsoft an accomplice to the issue at hand, for that matter, regardless of which political party did what. The fact that they actually used that service or whatever for their own purposes against who knows whether against this politician, against that politician, whatever the case might be, they used it as an accomplice scenario. So when I learned about that, I just had a canary when I chatted with my other half about that. So that was that issue. I'm sure a lot of people are wondering, what in the world? How can you involve Microsoft as being an accomplice? Well, let's see. Did they use one of the other server-side clouds for information transfer or whatever, or cohesion or whatever you want to call it? So,
you raise a very, very good point. I mean, certainly if we adopt the gun grabber's logic that when somebody does something bad with a computer, all computer users share the equal guilt. But unfortunately, in terms of actually being able to do anything about any misbehaving computer software company, you need to remember that back in the early days, when computers were a very fledgling industry and needed protection, Congress passed laws indemnifying them from product liability, and that should have been repealed a long time ago. But computers and software are very large industries. They've got very powerful lobbyists, and they basically keep the rules set up so that they can be putting out software that isn't working correctly or processing chips with backdoors built into them, and they have nothing to fear from the American people.
I forgot about that. They had them basically labeled as a person, not as a corporation. I forgot all about that mess, legally speaking. Oh, as far as the gun issue goes and all that and so forth, which I wish the federal government would keep their nose out of who owns what or whatever as far as firearms safety is concerned. You know, if they go and do that, then what are they going to do with that as far as owning a vehicle, since it could be used as a weapon? I guess people won't be able to eat with a butter knife or, for that matter, when they're cooking, or a steak knife when they're eating dinner, a steak or whatever the case might be, pray forbid. So why don't they go ahead and make everything in life illegal and just disband everything? I mean, that would certainly put the automobile industry in jeopardy. That would put the petrochemical industry in jeopardy. And believe me, let's see how long it is before they start, I think we opened a can of worms we shouldn't have gone to.
Well, again, the goal is not even to ban all guns, but specifically to get rid of the militarily usable weapons. I remember when I was a young kid, about the times of, the Watts riots and everything, the gun grabbers' focus back then was on the Saturday Night Special, the cheap concealable guns that were actually being used for real crime. But if you've noticed today, those other smaller guns aren't even being talked about. It's always the AR-15. It's always the modern sporting rifles, because those are the ones that give the American people the most effective force to use against the encroachment of tyranny. That's why they're after them.
Crazy. Absolutely insane. Y'all have a great one. Thanks again.
All right. Thanks an awful lot. We're going to let you go, and the phone lines are open again, 800-313-9443. This story just came on in. Apparently, North Las Vegas police officers arrested a woman who tried to storm an elementary school with an axe. So ban axes, 15-day waiting period on axes. And they're saying that she appeared to be impaired, which may translate as out of her mind on prescription psychiatric medication. We need to follow up on that one. But it underscores something that the gun grabbers fail to understand. If you take the guns, people who are intending mischief will find other things to use. Knives, axes, what have you. That's just the reality. The problem is to get the bad people and to understand why they're bad. And a big part of the blame, I think, lies in those prescription antidepressant medications. We didn't have those when I was a kid. We didn't have ADHD when I was a kid. We had teachers boring me. We all had guns starting at age 12. We all hunted. We all put food on the table with those guns. We never had a mass shooting, not one. Anyway. So there's the axe lady. All right, let's back up and catch some war zone news here that's just now coming in. It's a very busy news day. The stuff is just coming across the desk. Apparently, there is now a popular uprising reported in northeastern Syria against the U.S. occupation. And apparently, a large number of people in the city of Raqqa have taken to the streets in opposition to the U.S. buildup, accusing the U.S. military forces and their allied militants of destroying their city and executing large groups of civilians. The protesters have vowed not to cooperate with the U.S. troops and warned that they will continue to show their disagreement of the U.S. forces' occupation and the disintegration of Syria in demonstrations and strikes. So now the people of Syria want the U.S. to leave here. Some people do want to leave. They want to leave eastern Ghouta, but once again, snipers are preventing people from leaving eastern Ghouta during the daily truce hours. They want the civilians in there so they can say Assad is killing civilians. Now, Syria's envoy to the United Nations has basically disputed this latest story that Assad is gassing his people in Ghouta, and once again, there is no evidence of it whatsoever. And a lot of people are saying, oh, come on, how many times are you going to try and make fools of us this way? But the envoy to the UN basically came on out and said Syria cannot use chemical weapons because we have none. Remember, Putin brokered a deal where Syria surrendered all their chemical weapons under international inspection. Everybody was in there saying, yes, those are all the chemical weapons. They have all been destroyed. But you've been hearing the stories pushed by the West. Syria has secret underground chemical weapons factories that nobody ever found. And North Korea is sending in parts to help them. Really? Where's your proof? We don't have proof. We just know it in our heart of hearts that these are all bad people, which gives us the right to go on in and shoot them. Okay, now the blame Russia thing is getting a little bit out of hand with this Russia hysteria. And just when you think they can't get any sillier, they do. And corporate outlets have blamed Russia for almost everything from the election of Donald Trump. They blamed Russia for fake news. They blame Russia for conspiracy theories. They're blaming Russia for the protest movements, and they're blaming Russia for vaccine skepticism. And now they've come up with a new one. Apparently, professors at Iowa State University and reported in the Des Moines Register are blaming Russia for doubts about the safety and efficacy of GMO food. And the claim is being made that Russia is funding media outlets that question the safety of GMOs in an effort to make war on U.S. agricultural interests and to improve sales for its ecologically clean alternative to genetically modified food. Look, we've all seen that French study. We know that the World Health Organization deemed glyphosate a probable carcinogen. They probably would have said definite, but the lobbyists were there. And because of that one step back, a federal judge on Monday has halted California's plan to require Monsanto to put warning labels on its Roundup products saying it's a possible carcinogen, saying that in his view, the federal judge's view, scientists still have not shown a clear connection between glyphosate and cancer. Obviously, somebody needs to get a copy of that French report into the hands of this judge. Now, we've been talking about prescription antidepressants, and apparently there is a new one out. It's a generic, and it's basically a generic version of venlafaxine, and it's supposed to be an antidepressant, and instead it leaves them depressed and anxious. And apparently there's this one person here, 33 years old, thinks the brand switch nearly cost her her life. And I understand exactly where she was coming from. So basically, Pharmac was funding Effexor XR, the original version of the antidepressant, and it now pays for a cheap generic version called Enlafax. And apparently they were assuring people you will see no difference, and they did. And again, my experience with antidepressants many years ago, when my first marriage had ended with the breakup, and I said, well, man can't have something like this remain entirely cheerful. And she said, well, let me give you something. And I wish I could remember the specific name of the medication she gave me. And I took it in accordance with the directions on the bottle. And for about 3 weeks, I was happy. I was fun to be with. I got invited to parties, and I was having a good time. And then all of a sudden, the 4th week, it backflashed on me into the blackest, most hideous depression I have ever known in my life. I was literally sitting on the kitchen floor in the corner just saying, it's the chemicals, it's the chemicals, it's the chemicals that are doing this. That's how bad it was. Okay. Now, somebody has done an update on the Celebrite story. Apparently, it's an Israeli company. We were not surprised about that. They're now able to unlock iPhones running iOS 11. So, yes, they probably have some zero-day exploits they are hoarding here. All right, I'm actually running out of stuff to talk about here, so please call in with any comments or questions, 800-313-9443. Getting on back to the war zones, basically Iran's Rouhani is saying, for Yemen's sake, stop giving Saudi Arabia weapons of mass destruction. And basically, President Hassan Rouhani has called on the Western countries to stop providing Saudi Arabia with weapons of mass destruction for the sake of the Yemeni people who've been suffering under all of this stuff. And he made the remarks in an address to a large crowd of people in the southern port city of Bandar Abbas on Wednesday. And Rouhani is saying, you say that you care about the people of Yemen, but you give Saudi Arabia these napalm bombs, this white phosphorus. You shouldn't do that. We'll be right back after these commercials. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here. And apparently over in Ghouta, the agency delivering food for the United Nations into Syria is caught trading that food for sex. Terrible, terrible, terrible stuff here. Okay, so getting on back to the news here. According to Russia's Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, the U.S. is now training EU armies to basically effectively nuke Russia. And Lavrov has accused the United States of hurdling international nuclear disarmament efforts by training European armies to use tactical nuclear weapons against Russia. All of these nuclear missions are violations of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which everybody is supposed to be playing by. But we already know the United States ignores it, because one of the stipulations in the Non-Proliferation Treaty is the U.S. is obligated to help other countries build peaceful uses of nuclear power, like power stations, like Iran. And if the U.S. interest in Iran had really been to make sure that there wasn't a bomb factory hidden under the reactor the way Israel has at Dimona, they would have gone on in, helped pour the foundation, lay the piping and the wiring. They didn't do that. They just want the war. We have some callers. Okay, Chris in Utah, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Yes, sir. Government seems to be trying to start a war with just about everybody all at once. I was wondering if you think that maybe with all these trillions of dollars of black budget spending, they could have developed a super weapon that would allow them to actually win such a thing. If not, I think they're clear, flat, crazy.
Well, that's certainly a real possibility. I mean, we know that something like $8 trillion vanished out of the Pentagon budget, and it's entirely possible that somewhere in the black project world they've come up with something they think is powerful enough to overwhelm the rest of the world.
So is that a yes? You think that maybe that's why they're doing it?
I think it's possible.
Okay. Okay, thank you kindly, and I surely appreciate your program.
All right, thank you very much. Everybody's already talking about moving war up to space. We know that Russia, China, and the U.S. are already experimenting with these hypersonic wave riders, transatmospheric craft. So they could have all kinds of things up there. All right, let's see. Let's go to Steve Elkins. Aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Well, Michael, on top of your SSRI problems, adverse reactions and problems with that, as another one is your tricyclics, kind of like amitriptyline is a bad one. A lot of side effects there with suicidal ideation and violence. So another one I actually came across personally in my own experience with when I had mononucleosis. It had been high doses of steroid, prednisone, to be the accuracy of that one. And I got to admit, the high doses of prednisone I was on, boy, that is a medication that will mess your head up. Thank God I had, understood what was going to be happening to me, but I couldn't wait till the whole regimen was over. I was on high doses, and I had to titrate down after a high dose, but come down week by week until I finally weaned off. But I totally changed my personality, but I knew it was about to happen. But my wife was looking at me like, oh my gosh. But prednisone is really is not being looked at much at all, and neither is your tricyclic medications like amitriptyline. Not at all.
Well, there are a lot of dangerous medications out there, and if you go to ssristories.org, they look at all the medications, not just SSRIs. I got an email from somebody who used to be associated with a nursing home, and apparently was there when the nursing home decided, just for the heck of it, they were going to put SSRIs in all their patients' pill cups. And he said it was weird to watch. It was like the movie Invasion of the Body Snatchers. Just everybody just changed.
Yeah, it's weird stuff. Hey, I did see something. I don't know if I sent it over to you on email, but there's a mini-series coming out in July, I believe it is, and the producer and director and producer is Jay-Z, of course, the Satan worshiper. And, of course, the mini-series is a 6-part series of the Trayvon Martin story. So I can just wonder, is that going to stir up some emotions out here in Florida and cause some more racial problems? What's the whole purpose behind it? And now that we know what Jay-Z really is, it'll be interesting.
It will be, and again, if there were race riots, they've been trying to get race riots in this country for years now, with the goal of declaring a national emergency, suspending the Constitution, and disarming us that way. But I think corporate media has so burned itself out with the American people. People aren't watching these movies anymore. They're not watching these propaganda shows. I mean, I saw the ads for these things, and I said, I'm pass. I'm not going to look at that. I'm not interested in reliving the Trayvon Martin case. And I want to see something original, like Atomic Homefront. That's a good one. The fact that their audiences for corporate media are in decline actually undermines their mission. So we'll see what happens.
It's interesting that Hollywood has no new fresh ideas. They're bringing back old sitcoms. I saw Roseanne's coming back.
All the creative people are gone.
Back. I mean, they can't find any new ideas.
All the really creative people have been driven out. It's just like McCarthyism all over again. People who are thinking outside the box, people who are truly creative, are a threat to the liberal PC system. And we've all been ejected over the years. And again, same thing happened during the McCarthy era. Steve, I got to let you go. We got to take a break for commercials. When we come on back, we've got another phone call. And aloha, America. Welcome back to our show here, and we're going to go back to the phones to Alex in Florida. Aloha, Alex. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hey, Michael, I just wanted to let the listeners know that the fact that the DNC has not turned over their server, or that Mueller has not demanded it, or that none of our congressmen have demanded that, tells you that we're not living in a democracy. I mean, I would think that is the main evidence of Russia hacking. How come it's not being demanded that we get to inspect that?
You raise a very, very good point. I mean, obviously, if Russia did hack that server, that's the smoking gun. But you're right. They're ignoring it. They're pretending it doesn't exist. And it's rather amazing to sit here and see how institutional Washington, D.C. is all about getting after Trump, getting him any way that they can, and they're ignoring the crimes by their own. And the American people are noticing it. That's why we're starting to screaming sessions. Look at that Uranium One deal. Look at the Clinton Foundation. Look at all the dead bodies. And more importantly, again, there's a legitimate question out there. Given the 1996 history of the Chinagate scandal with the Clintons allowing to be sold sensitive technology to China and getting campaign donations back in return, it's legitimate to ask if Hillary Clinton, while Secretary of State, was selling U.S. secrets to foreign interests and using her charitable foundation to collect and launder the payments. That's it.
Yeah, and I saw an interview with Sessions the other day. I watched it on YouTube, and I don't know. I can just look in his eyes, and I can see that he's compromised or something. He's giving us the half-truth. And there's just so much evidence that he's not even looking at. I mean, everyone keeps on saying he needs to look at the emails and he needs to look at the FISA. He needs to demand the DNC server. And it's just in every aspect of our society, just like with Sandy Hook. I saw where a principal was questioning the legality, the actual occurrence of Sandy Hook, and he went to court and he was saying, well, can you show us maintenance records of the school where you came in to fix these problems that the school was having? No, we can't. Can we listen to any of the 911 calls from Sandy Hook? No, those aren't available. There's never any evidence available. I mean, they just expect us to swallow it, and this is what happened, and that's it. It's just, I mean, that's where we're at. The fact that Sessions isn't demanding the DNC server, or Mueller is not demanding that, should let us know that they're really not interested in finding the truth.
No, they're not. They're not. Mueller is the attack dog that's been sicked on Donald Trump, and Sessions is just another Loretta Lynch. His job is to make sure investigations do not happen, and he really should go. And Trump's got to come up with the spine to fire him. And yes, the media's going to say, oh, he's trying to wreck the investigations and cover things up. No, let's get Larry Klayman in there. I signed his petition, by the way, and so should you. Larry Klayman down at Freedom Watch has a petition up there. He's going to send it to the White House if he gets enough signatures saying, fire Robert Mueller and give Larry Klayman the job. Larry Klayman will do the job. So would Tom Fitton.
Yeah, that's right. And when the Inspector General report comes out on Hillary Clinton's email crimes, even if it sets off a lot of fireworks and it maybe will induce Sessions to have to do something, if I was Trump, I would use that as an excuse to fire him and let him know that you should have known that. All the information that the Inspector General hopefully will give us, Sessions should have already known that. And I think that will be a good excuse for Trump to go in there and fire anyone he doesn't like.
Well, Trump is already expressing his ire over the handling of the FISA investigation, and apparently he was very short with Sessions today, saying it's disgraceful how this has been mishandled, and that's absolutely true. Because, again, Sessions' job is to protect the FBI and the Department of Justice officials who were leading this attack on Donald Trump with all this nonsense about Russia, 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 and use that ginned-up, phony dossier to swindle a warrant out of the FISA court. Anyway, listen, Alex, I got to let you go. We do have calls coming on in. I want to give everybody a turn.
Thank you.
So we're going to switch over to Neil in California. Aloha, Neil. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Aloha, Michael, Claire, and the United States of America. I called a while ago, a couple weeks back, and we talked about draining of the swamp being a grassroots effort, letting them actually hang themselves out to dry.
Yes.
I'm seeing it even more right now with the, not Mueller, but the Mueller investigation. Rosenstein admitted on national TV that we have found absolutely no collusion with Trump and Russia, hence the investigation is now moot. So now they're going to go back and look at financial records to 2013.
Mm-hmm.
So it's turned into a fishing expedition.
It always was a fishing expedition.
But what I just saw this last week, Michael, and it made my heart really happy, is they connected Podesta and the Podesta group to Gates and Manafort under investigation for money fraud and laundering, and who was really connected with Hillary.
Yes.
It's almost like a connect the dots kind of thing, and allowing it to keep connecting the dots. Because the only collusion they're finding is with Podesta, Hillary, Comey, Loretta, all of those people that are now, hiding or being asked by Nunes with his 10-question memo due on Friday. If you don't answer it, you get subpoenaed. Now, I heard something today, and I'm in sunny California, and I've been lugging wood into my fire stove for half the day because of all the snow here. So I've missed a lot of news. What I heard this morning was that the guy who talked to Papadopoulos, which is the other part of the Democratic, reason for the investigation, has been missing or MIA since October of 2017.
Wow.
So if Gage, the guy who made the memo, or not the memo, the dossier.
Yes.
The
No, that's
MI6
Christopher
guy
Steele.
from England.
That's Christopher Steele who wrote the dossier.
He's in hiding, and then now the only other witness the FBI, DOJ, and the Democrats have is been missing for, quite a while. So they can't back up anything they've told any of us about anything they've ever said.
Yep. It's like the other caller said. They just they just put these lies out, and they demand that we just believe them. And that's not in the Constitution either. There's nothing in the Constitution that says we have to take the government's word about anything. The government should always be required to prove to the people that it is working in their interests. Anyway,
I agree with you. I agree with you so much. And then look at what's being disappeared on the Twitter, the YouTube,
yes.
the Facebook, and anybody talking about anything other than the party line.
Yeah.
Aloha, Michael. I hope you and Claire are doing good. America, stand tall and free and fight this crap. Sorry for my language. Love you all. Talk to you soon.
All right. Thank you very much. And we're going to switch over to Kathleen in Paris. Aloha, Kathleen. Welcome to the show. What is on your mind?
Hello, Michael.
Bonjour.
I have two things if you really have time. One is yesterday, I was listening to yesterday's show, What is My Morning?
Yes.
And somebody spoke about the tiny dot, that video.
Yes.
And that is so good. People should look that up. And
I put it on the front page. I put it on the front page of whatreallyhappened.com today. It's up there to see.
Oh, great. Okay. And the creator of that is Larkin Rose.
Yes.
And he is one of the people in the libertarian voluntarism community, I guess, that can really help me understand libertarianism and or voluntarism against what we have now, which is, I guess, statism and the big government. Larkin Rose, he's really helps me get it, that we have to get away from trusting the government and the state and big government.
Absolutely.
So, and I have another little story, if you want, about sexual harassment, and it ties in with your experiences in Germany when you were frowned upon if you didn't tell girls that they look pretty today.
Yes.
when I was in Italy in my 30s, I got several times pinched on my butt. And I came to understand that that was flattering and that it's a contact sport and it's just bad form to make a big flap about it if you get pinched.
Mm-hmm.
And I learned how to sort of spot them, the ones in the crowd. I mean, because you would get pinched and you would turn around and you couldn't see who did it.
Yeah.
You just got. And so then when I was in my 40s, I was back in Italy again and kind of wondering, would I get pinched this time? And wanting to know, do I still have it? But it was like that. It was, and so it's kind of this, I don't want to make light of anybody who was really sexually harassed, whose career, like Anita Hill, who couldn't really just quit her job or, sexual harassment is a terrible thing. But it's nuanced. We don't need to make a big flap about something that in a certain place like Germany or southern Italy is cultural.
Well, again,
we Americans.
Again, these things are a matter of fashion, and certainly the idea of taking innocent flirtation and turning it into sexual harassment is part of the feminist agenda to divide men from women and turn us against each other. And I've never seen the government working so hard at this divide and conquer nonsense. This is far worse than it was back in the 60s under COINTELPRO. They're desperate to get us to fight against each other out of fear that we're going to unite together and hand the government a pink slip and say, you're out of here because you're not doing the job we the people demand that you do. You're not in compliance with the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, and that is the original contract with America. And any government that is not keeping itself in 100% conformance with the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, they're illegal and illegitimate, is really what it comes down to.
And I think we should stop paying taxes and even stop paying credit card bills.
Well, that's a complex issue. I understand a lot of people are tax protesters because they don't like where the tax money is being spent. But the credit card bills, you did voluntarily enter into that debt. And, of course, right now my recommendation is to pay off those credit cards any way that you can right now. Claire and I put our credit cards on a diet of burnt crumbs and toast some years ago, and we've got them down to very reasonable levels now. So when it really starts to hit with the rate increases from the Fed, I don't think we're going to get hit too bad. We are absolutely refusing to finance the car that we're going to buy this weekend. We're just going to get the best deal we can for what we have saved up and then get a good aftermarket alarm system. But I think debts that you voluntarily enter into, you do have an obligation to deal with that, unless there is fraud on the other side that you can demonstrate, and of course fraud negates consent, like some of the stuff that Wells Fargo's been caught doing.
I got pretty good at outmaneuvering those pinchers.
Well, my experience in Italy was the same thing as well. I saw a lot of pinching going on. I saw a lot of girls pinching guys back. So it was
it's a sport.
Yeah, it's just a flirtation. It's a flirtation, and in a normal world, it would be seen as just harmless. But again, the feminists have turned any kind of contact or any kind of flirt, even a smile, it's a form of sexual assault. Back in the 1990s, when they were pushing that whole rape epidemic crisis, the feminists came out and said that holding a woman's hand without permission was a form of rape. Now, that's pretty ridiculous. And first of all, most times you hold somebody's hands, it's with their permission. But I mean, they were out there declaring everything to be rape, just like today they're blaming everything on Russia. That was the villain of the day. And it was all about dividing men and women. It was all about exploiting women who were just, being not just encouraged, demanded to get out of the home, stop being mothers and housewives, and work to get a career. And that's why our kids have been raised mostly by pop culture and social media since then, which is why most of them do not have a sense of values or an appreciation for human life. And I've seen this war coming a long time. I started seeing it way back when. Anyway, Kathleen, we're going to let you go. We're about to hit a commercial break here. Roxanne in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. Actually, Roxanne, I'm sorry. We're going to have to do the commercial break. Then I'll come back for these last 2 phone calls for the rest of the show. So please stay tuned, and we'll be back after these words from our sponsors. And aloha, America. Welcome back to the show here. And don't forget, RBN is having this power seminar. We've got a link from whatreallyhappened.com to the page of information about how you can lower your electricity costs and help RBN all at the same time. So that would be a really, really good thing. Okay, we've got time for 2 more phone calls. Roxanne in Texas, aloha. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hello?
You're on the air.
Okay. I just wanted to talk real briefly about these shooters and all of these situations. Have you ever heard of something called the devil's breath? What it is it's the Colombians they use it, the gangs. What they do is it's like it's scopolamine. It's basically they use that in anesthesia.
Mm-hmm.
And what they do is they can either put it in somebody's drink or blow it in their face. And there's a lot of stories on YouTube about how these people go to their bank accounts and wipe it out, or their homes and wipe it out, and they don't remember a thing. And that's what I think is really being more than just, I know they're on SSRI, but to get somebody to do all that, I think something like scopolamine, if you look at those YouTubes, you might be interested one day. And that's what I think.
Well,
is going
I'm looking at an article right now where apparently it's called Burundanga, and some people are claiming that it's just an urban myth. But we do know that the myth of the zombie in voodoo, that of a mindless working slave, not the drooling things that they popularize in Hollywood, but just a controllable laborer slave in voodoo, is actually based on real pharmacology, having to do with, I think, tetrodotoxin. Say that one 3 times fast.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Okay, well, let's get to your next call. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to switch over to Joe in California. Aloha, Joe. Welcome to the show. What's on your mind?
Hi, thank you for taking my call. Regarding that girl that just called in, if she looks up something called Aquadots, they've recently changed their name to Pixels, but maybe that would help explain one of the things that is bizarre that brought up her issue. The lady from France, she mentioned Larkin Rose.
Yes.
The most in-depth I've seen of that guy is in the Freedom to Fascism documentary by Aaron Russo.
Yes.
In there, along with other constitutional attorneys, and they break it all down. And Reagan appointed a Grace Commission to find out where the taxes collected go, and found out not one nickel goes to the services the taxpayers expect from the government. The other lady that called in, Frances, asked about Pelosi's lawn and garden service and mowing the lawn. And Pelosi herself clearly stated, I wish I could take all the illegals home with me, since she hires only illegals to work on her multi-million-dollar vineyards in the Napa Valleys of California. And what I was concerned mostly about was the constant blaming of a scapegoat or a patsy to try to blame, to draw attention away. And the patsy's like blaming Russia for everything.
Yeah, well, Joe, I'm sorry. I'm going to have to cut you off. There's the music, and it's time for us to bring this show to an end. Thank you for the phone call. We're going to let you go. Everybody, please stay tuned for John Stadmiller. He's got a lot of interesting things to share with you. Take what you learn here at Republic Broadcasting and whatreallyhappened.com and share them with everybody. We now have to work our way around the corporate social media, and I need your help to do it. Let's just go back to ordinary email. They're not filtering that, at least not yet. We'll be back tomorrow. Aloha, America.